Okay, so I'm here to make another one of these videos. Today was Free Comic Book Day, and Free Comic Book Day is great. Hopefully everybody went out to Free Comic Book Day. I go to Free Comic Book Day at Up and Away, which is Kendall Swafford's comic book store. There's two locations. I go to the Blue Ash one because it's closer to me, and it's the best comic store around here. If you're looking for new stuff, Kendall curates really well. You can find a lot of great things at Up and Away, and Kendall's a good guy. So for sure, go to Up and Away if you are in the greater Cincinnati area and check it out. I'm going to run through some of the free comics I got, and then I'll go into the back issue diving things. Most of these are for my kids. So I wanted to start off with a comic that I mentioned in the last video, or at least a creator. This is Little Lulu, and there's some John Stanley stories in here. John Stanley's a humor cartoonist who was had a ton of output in the 50s and 60s, and all of my books are currently packed up right now because of the basement flood, but this one was floating around. This is his Tubby collection. It is designed by Seth, beautifully designed, and I gotta say, as far as these comics go, like, my kids love Tubby and Melvin Monster, and Tubby especially, for some reason, is everybody's favorite, and this one especially, Tubbs' mustache, where he wakes up with a mustache and everybody wants him to cut it off. It's great stuff. So that was my number one grab, because I knew my daughter would be excited about some Little Lulu books. I also picked up My Hero Academia. This is all of my students at the high school love My Hero Academia, and I'd not read any of it, so I thought maybe this would be a cool thing to look at. This one looked a little weird, Blastosaurus, made by Golden Apple Books. It just looked different, and so I figured it'd be worth a shot. Free. I picked up the Avengers Free Comic Book Day book. This is going to a student. You're going to find that there's a lot of these books that I bought for my students. I teach high school English, so if a kid expresses an interest in comics, I usually try to run down some. So this is a new one. I looked at it. It's good. It's fun. This is the Free Comic Book Day. Our favorite thing is My Favorite Thing is Monsters. I've not read My Favorite Thing is Monsters. It's beautifully impressive work. And I only have myself to blame for not reading that, because I'm pretty sure this is a pretty, look at that. This is a pretty easy library find. But yeah, just not enough hours in the day. So this one's the only one that's kind of definitely sticking with me. And then this DC one. I did buy one current off-the-racks book today on my pull list. That would be Green Lantern 7, Grant Morrison writing it and Liam Sharp doing the art. I dig this run. The art is just like a real sort of throwback. I can almost imagine I'm reading something from the 80s. It's some cool stuff. I haven't read it yet, so I'm kind of spoiling myself here. Put that down. Okay, everything from here on, I think, is from the quarter bin pile, or a dollar bin pile, rather. At the top here, these are just books that I got for my classroom. I got Hawkeye 1 and 2. I picked this up because of the movie. I thought people would be interested, but I do like the pencils in here from Leonardo Romero. I think they're pretty neat. I like that kind of style. I picked up Jonesy 3 and 4. I can almost guarantee that these are not going to make it out of the house, because my son Elliot has Jonesy number 1, and I think he really likes it. Jonesy has just really cool art. It doesn't look like anything else that's on the shelves when it was coming out. So 3 and 4 there. This one is awesome. I have a copy of this, and I bought a copy of this for a kid. This is Avengers number 1, the 100th anniversary issue, and James Stocco did this, and it's super cool. It's sort of like a projected 100 years in the future story, but his art is just impressive, to a level of you finish this, and even though it was just kind of a one-off fun thing, you wish that this was just coming out on a monthly basis. But he does all sorts of other cool stuff. He had a cool, besides his creator-owned stuff, he had a cool Aliens miniseries a couple of, maybe last year. That thing was something. Star-Lord, and I picked up the comic book history of comics. Thought that'd be cool to have in my classroom. There's Cleveland. And a Batman 66. So these are books that will probably live in my classroom. I'll give them away. They are pretty easy student reading fodder. I think everything else in here is staying with me. Valhalla Mad. It's a number one. Joe Casey's a pretty reliable guy as far as being a writer attached to ideas that, I don't know, he takes, he does what I wish more creators would do, which is just kind of takes the bare bones approach. If he wants to write about superheroes, he can do a Batman book without it being Batman. Maybe this is a Thor book. It looked cool. I haven't looked at a lot of these, so going to be interested to check that out. I picked up Gregory 2, Herman Vermin's very own best-selling, critically acclaimed book. Mark Hempel is a guy that when I was a kid in the 90s, he was probably most famous for his run on Sandman. He was on it during the last arc of that book, and I've always dug his stuff. To me, as a kid who started reading Sandman in the, like, toward the end of its run, Hempel's Sandman is my favorite Sandman. I know that that's a big swing for some people because there were a lot of great artists that were on Sandman, but his is sort of like the one that I have in my mind when I think about what that character looks like, which is, you know, cool. And he's also a great artist as far as his creator-owned stuff. He did Tug and Buster, which is a super funny book. Tug and Buster is the kind of book that I think about as being a very mid-90s book. Humor sort of goes to an extreme place that no other media was really going to reliably in storytelling. Yeah, cool stuff. Mark Hempel. I picked up two of these Popeyes. Roger Langridge is writing it. He might be doing some art on it, but these books have some amazing production values. IDW got the Popeye license, and they've been putting out new books, and they've been putting out books that, like, this sort of mimics the old style. Like, you never would know that this wasn't made back in the day. It looks great. Two of those. Okay. I picked up David Chelsea's Snow Angel. David Chelsea's probably most famous, I guess, for David Chelsea in Love, his autobio comic of the, I think it was the 80s. I read it. It's a cool book. I read it more than once, and it's another one of those cool autobio books that kind of, I don't know, a lot of the characters in it are not very sympathetic at times, especially David himself. This looks to be a one-shot, and yeah, I don't know. David Chelsea in Love was in black and white, so this is kind of interesting color that he's doing it. I guess he's doing the color as well. Very nice. Collected from a Dark Horse Presents run. I snatched up this beater copy of Satana the Devil's Daughter. I think I mentioned in the last video one of my favorite modes for comic publishers in the 70s was trying to figure out how to take popular culture and sort of like cram it into comics. And when The Exorcist was a big hit, it seemed like every comic company was trying to figure out a way to have the devil in some kind of comic. So Satana the Devil's Daughter, again, I just never looked at it for a buck, even though it's falling apart. Sure. Jack Kirby's Captain Victory and the Galactic Rangers. I'm coming pretty close to having a full run of Captain Victory. It is wild, especially given that this was late in Kirby's career. There's some other late Kirby stuff in this pile, but I always liked this. It was pretty far-flung. I picked up Ms. Tree's Thrilling Detective Adventures. I always liked Max Allan Collins wrote this, and I've always liked his stuff. He did the he's done a ton of stuff over the years. The thing I like most that he's done is Quarry, which is a book series. They made some comics out of it, but it's sort of a Rust Belt assassin, gun for hire. And I think this was mentioned on the program recently because of the pinups. Frank Miller did a bunch of famous detective pinups, like Mike Hammer, which Max Collins ended up writing some Mike Hammer books. So Miss Tree is also very, I think, inspired by Mike Hammer. It's the idea that, like, Mike Hammer died and Velda has to become a detective. So, yeah, cool. This is Amazing High Adventure number 4. Just look at the lineup here. John Bolton, John Severin, Steve Bissette. I might have missed this one if it hadn't been for a helpful hand. So I do thank the fellas who pointed this out to me. I like that Severin stuff. Severin doing Western stuff is always a good mode for him. And then we've got, here's the Bissette stuff. Look at that. Hooray! Yeah, that's going right to the top of the read pile tonight. I think in the last video I talked about how blown away I was by the first issue of the Max Immortal. I found issue 7, so I want to get all these, and it was cool to find this one. And I also found the first issue of The One, which like the design sense is just super cool, and yeah, I'm gonna keep looking for this. Picked up the NAMM 6 and 7 at a used book sale a couple years ago. I came across the Marvel trade for the NAMM. I collected the first 4 issues. It was an older trade. It was kind of before trade paperbacks had blown up and were sold all over the place. And I loved it, and one of the reasons I picked this up, it's an earlier issue, is I wanted to take in some more of that beautiful Michael Golden artwork. Golden stuff is like super cartoony sometimes, and then super realistic sometimes, and always kinetic. Like the action is always like great. And so I picked up 6. And I picked up 7, even though issue 7 has, they sort of play it, because there's 1 page of his artwork at the beginning, and then 1 page at the end, and the rest of it's a flashback. I know he didn't stay on this book I don't think he stayed on this book a long time, I should say. But for $1 a piece, it was definitely worth snatching up. I did finish my run of Slash Maraud, so this is definitely, again, going to the top of the read pile. It looks great. I've never been a fan. Like, I would say that probably this team of Menke and Galassi, or Menk, is probably most famous for Master of Kung Fu, which I've not read any of. But these hold up really well. Like, sometimes you find books in the dollar bin and they're just beaters, but these look nice, which is cool. Phantom Force number 1, this was in its bag, and it came with a card, and I ripped it out when I got it home. Famously talked about on Kayfabe for the Jack Kirby pencils and the murderer's row of inkers who either did or did not kind of stick to Kirby's, like they really changed things around. I wish that they had done what they'll end up doing on a lot of other books, is like kind of telling you who was inking what. You can figure it out. It's pretty easy. But it'd be nice to kind of have it there. These are like definitely the McFarlane inks, I think. That's for sure. Look at that hair. Surprisingly, on the first look around, my favorite inker on this was Jim Lee did this pinup of right here, and it's pretty good. I mean, like, that's probably my favorite of the Image founders doing inks on this book, and it is one page. And then there's like a cool testimonial in the background. This is a cool book, and there's a lot of them out there. I definitely recommend finding them. Some Wildcats. Yeah, Jai Lee. This is probably a book I would have passed on pretty reliably if I hadn't been in a kayfabe frame of mind. So it's cool to check out. And it's got another one of those crazy covers. And that reminds me, I have another crazy cover that I got as a. They had a bonus bag of comics at Up and Away, and so I got this. I don't know. This is Purgatory. I don't even know. It's like Purgatory. I can't even see. Purgatory number 1 of 3. It's this shiny, embossed. It looks like. Yeah, it's very, very scary looking. So I do like some of the stupid covers. So that one's up there. I picked up the Black Racer Oversized Special. DC put out a bunch of these when Kirby turned 100, which I give them a lot of respect because they did actually do a lot of publishing around Kirby's 100th birthday. This one is Reggie Hudlin wrote it, and you had people like Dennis Cohen and Ryan Benjamin on the pencils. It's pretty cool. I have been in a New Gods frame of mind in the last year or two, and I do like it. And then in the back they have these reprints. It's always nice to see his stuff sort of around now. I've been having a drought on romance comics, and this one, I saw this and I grabbed it up right away with this Dave Stevens cover. I've been looking for this one for a while, True Love. I don't know if it's, I'm guessing it's reprints, but there's a lot of great talent attached to this. You got Alex Toth did some stuff here, I think. This is Vince Coletta, and the last story in here is Nick Cardy. Like, that's definitely a reprint. I think it's a reprint. I do like the romance stories, especially of a, like, they're so steeped in a time period. And this was a cool find. I was glad to find that. Okay, New York Year Zero. I mentioned in the last one that if I find a whole run of something and it's cheap enough, I might just buy it, especially if it's like a mini-series. Because you never know if you're going to run across it again. And I think this is a sort of 88, published in 88. This is to be a standard sort of post-apocalyptic nightmare type deal. Big Apple Goes Bad. 4 issues of it. Definitely cool. And I don't know. I will be checking them out as I start getting through my piles. P.K. Russell's Nightmare Music. I picked up a lot of Eclipse comics. I'm wondering if Kendall ended up with a collection of a ton of somebody's Eclipse comics that I sort of cherry picked off of. This is Night Music, science fiction and fantasy stories. That's nice. Yep. Mr. Russell is a nice fellow. I met him once and had him sign my Coraline adaptation he did, which is lovely. Really, really good. Also, another guy that people might say is up there in the pantheon of Sandman artists, just for his one contribution. I think he did Sandman 50. I think so. But yeah, cool. This one surprised me. This was in a plastic baggie when I bought it, or like a Mylar bag, and I took it out. It's Washouts #1, and I would have guessed that this was a book from the 80s, but it was published in 2002. Although I think maybe some of the art was done in the 80s. Looks to be kind of a space sword and sorcery mashup of some kind. I definitely was surprised by the age of it, and it's kind of cool. Black and White Magic. This is thick. Look at the size of this thing. This is published by Innovation, who I don't know any books from Innovation that I've ever liked. I think they used to publish Beauty and the Beast and Quantum Leap, and those were their licenses, and I grabbed it because of the cover. I do like some covers. I do like the holiday stuff. That's the reason I grabbed this Walt Disney's Christmas Parade and this Walt Disney's Autumn Adventures. With the flood hitting, I'm at a point where I have to decide whether I want to go back and replace books that I bought, or if I want to just move on. And so this one's a replacement. I may have made the decision already, but this one is not. It also has nothing to do with the holidays. It's just kind of a convenient TNA cover. So, yeah. Ribbit by Frank Thorne. Ribbit is from Comico. Frank Thorne is probably, I think, most famous for Red Sonja, drawing Red Sonja for Marvel. This doesn't look like it falls too much outside of that purview. But number one, it's cool to try. And Open Season number 1 from Renegade Press. This is a soft spot for me. I like looking at people's comics. This is clearly, this is probably more like somebody had an idea for a comic in the newspaper. That's my guess. And it was sort of expanded out. But they take advantage of that. It's not just reprints. And, yeah, pretty sketchy. There's also some, like, Ronald Reagan stuff at the end. So, I had no idea that Image did a JLA Cyberforce crossover. I have to admit I did pick this up before I realized that Mark Silvestri did not draw it. I picked it up, and that's not to say Doug Mahnke is a fine artist, but I may not have picked this up if I had realized it. But yeah, I can't imagine those two, this being it's a weird crossover. Let's just say that. There was a whole run of Spawns in the back issue bins, and I picked a couple of them up. I picked 11 up. This is the Frank Miller one. I picked this up entirely so, because I already have this somewhere, but entirely so that I could rip out the Jeff Darrow poster and hang it up in my garage. I know, it's probably a weird place to hang something like this, but I remember like just looking at this as a kid and just devouring all the tiny little details, little hidden jokes and stuff, off-color stuff. He's got mud flaps right over his ass, which I always thought was pretty funny as a kid, and still holds up. And then a couple of Spawns. I didn't crack into these. I don't know when McFarlane stopped drawing Spawn. I know these are definitely not him, but I think a couple of these might be. And probably by 26, he's handed the reins over to Greg Capullo full time, which is cool. I was out on Spawn, I think, I don't even think I ever had 19. I think I had 1 through 18, and then I was done. So I remember everything, and I'm just curious to see where it is, coming up to 300. I picked up issue 23 of Wizard, and then I picked up this issue of the Comics Journal. I was pretty excited to find this. This issue of the Comics Journal has interviews with a ton of autobiographical cartoonist luminaries, including, let's see, who's in here? I think we've got Harvey Pikar's in here, Seth, Chester Brown, and Joe Matt, Diane Newman, Dennis Eichhorn. I don't know much Dennis Eichhorn stuff. And there's a ton of stuff in here that's kind of cool. I do some autobio comics myself, mainly about my classroom. So I was definitely interested to see. This is cool. It's like kind of a repository for stuff. Barefoot Jed. I'm thinking about teaching Barefoot Jed next year. So good. So good. So yeah, that's cool. That's pretty much what I pulled. Free Comic Day has come and gone. I looking forward to the next one, man. Always good times. All right, thanks.